Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today I'm going to be working on the Golf again. I'm going to be showing you how to replace a lower control arm on the Golf. Now on this car right here, one of the bushings is shot on it. Now I can do one of two things. I can replace the entire lower control arm, or I can push out this bushing and replace it with a new one. Now the thing is, if I were to go that route, I could no problem do it and I'd be set and on my waist. But the difference is, this lower control arm with a brand new bushing cost me $2 more than what the bushing goes for. So at that point, it's worth it for me to just replace the entire thing. Now not only is that bushing right there kind of shot, but the entire control arm is very rusty. So at that point, for the extra $2, it's worth it for me to replace the entire thing and not have to worry about it. So for this thing, not only does it come with a new bushing right here, but it also comes with a new one on this side and a ball joint. So at this point, I'll be replacing all of this and not going to have to worry about it down the road. To replace this lower control arm and put it on the car, it's going to be quite easy. All we're going to have to do is take out this bolt for the ball joint. We're going to have to remove the bolt right here. Well, that should be right there. That's connected to the end link for the sway bar. Remove that bolt that's going through. And then we're going to have another one right here. Once we take all of those out, we're going to be able to swap this and install it on the car. So when we install this lower control arm on the car, what I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier is not install this lower ball joint. And the reason being is that the axle is going to be coming right here, and I don't have any room to get a ratchet or anything on this little nut right here, and enough room that I can put an Allen key through the middle of it. Come on, autofocus, you can do it. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, flip it over, take these 3 bolts out, take the entire lower ball joint out and out of the way, and slap the old one on here so I don't have to remove the axle. Now don't get me wrong, I am going to be replacing the lower ball joint, but not today in this video. When I install the GTI brakes on the car, I'll be taking all of it out. So at that point, I'll be able to change the lower ball joint and swap it out, no problem. But in the meantime, let's get installing this thing on the car. So the first bolt that I'm going to remove is the one that's going through here. And the way you get access to it is from the bottom. So you can either use a ratchet to get at it, or you can use an impact gun. It doesn't matter, they will both get the job done, but an impact gun is just going to be a little bit easier. Once you crack loose that bolt on the bottom, you're going to have to go on the top, right up in there, and you're going to have to hold the nut down so that when you twist it, the entire thing doesn't spin. And just like that, the nut and the bolt should both come out. So now that that bolt is removed, we're going to have to come on this side and remove this one.
For this bolt, it's very easy. All you need to do is remove it from the one side and you'll be able to take it out completely. The reason being is that this only threads into the back side of the subframe, so there's no nut on the other side that you need to hold on to. You can also see that the bushing right here is a little cracked, which means that the new one is going to replace it and we're going to have a healthy bushing afterwards.
So instead of the 18mm socket that we were using to take out those other bolts, we now need to use a 16. Now the end link right here is connected to the sway bar up top, and that prevents the car from leaning when you're going around turns. So get your 16mm socket, attach it on the end there, and then take it out with either a breaker bar or an impact gun. Just like that. You can then just move it out of the way just like this, so you have more room to work with. Now here comes the fun part. Because there's still tension inside the spring, it's still pushing down on the lower control arm. So I'm gonna get a jack and I'm gonna support the entire knuckle assembly from the bottom by the brake rotor, just so that when we take out those 3 last bolts on the bottom, the spring isn't gonna wanna shoot down the lower control arm and possibly hurt us or even kill us. So I'm gonna get my jack and support it from underneath. Now this next part is gonna be a little bit tricky on what I'm gonna be doing, so I'm gonna show you right now with the new part what's gonna be going down. So I've got the new part right here, and this is essentially what we're looking at on the car. So pretend this is mounted. We've got that removed, we've got that bolt removed, this end link removed, and now we need to take out these 3 bolts that are connecting underneath by a 13mm bolt. So I'm gonna get my 13mm socket, attach it on there. I'm gonna grab my impact gun and zip out these 3 bolts. Once that's done and out of the way, I'll be able to keep this intact on the hub, and I'll be able to swap out the lower control arm.
So get your impact gun, and from behind the knuckle, you're going to have to remove the 3 bolts that are holding the lower ball joint into the lower control arm. You can then let off any pressure that your jack has up against the entire front assembly.
You can see right now how the bushing is basically almost out, so you just need a little bit of force to take it out completely. Just like that, and do the same thing for the other side.
At this point, because I still have the strut and the knuckle still attached to the car through the axle shaft, I'm going to have to try and wiggle this lower control arm out of the way while trying to get the lower ball joint out of the way as well. So just keep wiggling everything and it'll eventually come all out.
So if you take a look at the boot right here on the old control arm, you can see how it's torn. And on the new one, right here, you can see that this thing is in perfect condition. Only because, well, it's brand new. There's no tears on either side, which means that we're not going to have any play in our suspension when we install this on the car. So because we took out those 3 bolts that were up here to remove the lower ball joint, we're going to have to take the new one off of our new arm just so that we can install this on the car. So with our 13mm socket, we're going to have to take off each one of these 3 bolts so we can remove the entire assembly. So get your socket, get your impact gun, and take each one of these bolts out. 1, 2, and 3. Now make sure that when you're taking this off, that you save this piece. Now we're going to need this next time we install this part right here on the car. Now we're going to be installing this lower ball joint when I install the bigger brakes on the car, so stay tuned for that video. In the meantime, I'm going to be saving these 3 pieces and setting them aside so that when we install them next time, we've got all of our parts.
So grab your new lower control arm and insert it in the bushings area first, and then we'll worry about the lower ball joint.
After we just push those through into here, you're going to have to pull the front end out so you can push the lower ball joint into the lower control arm. So we just pushed this end and this end here into place. Now we're going to have to turn the lower ball joint here into place so that we can insert the bolt and the nut into each one of these holes.
Once you wiggle the little bracket into place in between both ends of the lower control arm, we can then proceed to the next step.
Now that we have the lower ball joint pushed into place, we're going to need to attach the little bracket on top so that we can feed each one of these bolts through. So you put the little bracket on top of the lower control arm, and then you start threading the screws in. Now as soon as those bolts underneath were tightened up, don't tighten them up all the way, only because we're going to have to now install the bolts that feed the lower control arm onto the backside. So from down here, you then get your bolt and feed it through this side of the lower control arm. Now once it's in like this, tighten it up by hand, and then come in afterwards and tighten it up properly. Then do the exact same thing with this side. So get your bolt, feed it from underneath, and then make sure that you tighten this up properly with your nut sitting on the top of it. So up on there, well, I didn't really do it right there, but you get the gist of it. Put that through, and then tighten up that nut on top.
After all of those bolts are in there hand tight, you can then proceed to tighten them up with either hand ratchets or an impact gun to make sure that they don't move down the road.
And finally, twist the end length down so you can feed the bolt through the bushing into the lower control arm. Now after that, all you have to do left is put the wheel back on the car and you're done. Now the reason why you'd be doing this is that if you have any play, say, in your suspension system, if any of the bushings are shot, you can replace the bushing or replace the entire control arm and not have to worry about it. That's the option I went with today, only because it was an extra $2 on top of what a new bushing was worth. Now at that point, I found that a lot easier, and it took me no time at all. The entire thing was very easy. All I had to do was take 6 bolts out, take the old control arm out, throw the new one on, and put all those 6 bolts back in. Simple as that. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, post them down in the comments section below, and I'd be happy to help. Again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Now for this lower control arm, okay, really, Bird, are you done? Would you look at that? You stayed to the end. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to install GTI brakes on the Golf.